Get started in one more minute. One more minute. Okay, we can go ahead and get started today. Uh, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you to today's webinar that is presented by the Santa Barbara County America's Job Center of California. So the title of my presentation today, my name is Dr. Terrence Hinton. I am a workforce and reentry consultant for Medland Solutions, Medland Workforce and Reentry Solutions. And the title of my presentation today is What Issues Do People Face When Looking for Employment During the Era of COVID-19? Before we get started today, I wanted to just briefly tell you a little bit about myself. I have currently over 10 years of experience within the area of public policy, nonprofit administration, and management. Particularly my area of expertise is workforce development, reentry and workforce development. And sometimes I get the question of what is exactly reentry and workforce development? I work with individuals primarily who have been incarcerated within prisons throughout the United States, and helping them and assisting them with all aspects of reentry. I often go into prisons as well to assist people who are going to be coming out and transitioning into the workforce. For those of you who may be or may not be familiar, when you have a criminal background or felony on your record, it's in essence like a scarlet letter. And so oftentimes there's a lot of barriers when it comes to employment, access to certain licenses, housing is a big one, and voting, property rights. There's a lot of things that you're restricted from, and it makes it very difficult for people who are coming out to really truly transition. And so what I do is I come in and I really assist those individuals with how to successfully reintegrate back into the community and go through those barriers and help them work through those things so that they can get the assistance that they need to move forward. So to date, I have worked with close to 2,500 people who have some sort of background, not just people in prison, people who've been out in the community, people who've been out in the community for years, because they still have barriers. And I also work with individuals who simply want to switch careers. They don't have a background. They have something else that they want to do. And so I walk them through that process of how do you switch careers. So during the day, I am a professor in the areas of criminal justice and public administration at The Ohio State University. I work in the sociology department where I teach classes all related to criminal justice and public administration. I also teach from time to time at a number of different areas at other different universities from time to time online. Down here, I have my email address. If at any time you have any questions, comments, or for further clarification that you wanted to ask me about, feel free to touch base with me. You can also look at my LinkedIn page for additional reference if you choose to do so. I did not mention, but my doctorate is in public policy and administration, and my concentration is criminal justice. So a couple of things we're going to talk about to give you an overview before we dive in. So we're going to talk about a little bit of a background, and the background we're not going to spend a lot of time on because we all know what that background is as it pertains to COVID. We're going to transition really into where we are today, and as we all know, things have been rapidly changing, literally as we speak. So we're going to talk about that today. And then we're going to talk about the transition to the employment and landscape and labor market conditions. And so really the first half of this presentation is really, I'm going to give you concrete things to think about prior to before you start looking at employment in this COVID era, things that you need to think about and consider before you move forward. And once I do that, and once I've given you all that, then we're going to dive into reimagining what your career looks like. We're going to talk about transferable skills and how that relates to the job description, as well as the new occupation, a new area you want to go into. And the final thing, probably the most important, is the action steps, right? All the information is good, but concrete action steps that you need to take from the minute that you step off this presentation that you can do in order to facilitate this process. So there's a couple of things I would like for you to get out of this, but there's some main ones when it comes to learning our objectives. One of the first things is, as you seek employment, reassessing your situation and asking yourself the hard questions about what's most important to you. And we're going to dive into that. And the reason why I say hard is because what I am finding is a lot of times when it comes to employment, we just make decisions based on assumptions on what we think we might want. I want this job over here because it pays a lot of money. And we're going to talk about that. And what we're finding is money is not necessarily what's most important to people. So we're going to talk about that. And really after this presentation, it's my hope that you really start to examine those things. And we'll talk about that here shortly. Also, I want you to begin thinking outside the box after this presentation about how you define work and how you view work in this post-COVID era. Now, I say post-COVID era, full disclosure, in making this presentation at the time, things were a lot different. And as time has gone by, you've seen what's going on. And so I put in quotation marks because we're not really out of the post-COVID era. We're really still in it, but you get the picture. Despite what's going on, I still see it as we are on the other side of this. And so I really want you, after this presentation, that as you move forward in your job search process, that you really start to think outside the box about things that maybe you've never thought about before or never considered. And with that, I'm going to start to dive into some more specific things as it pertains to, the individual, and helping you identify those skills, right? You have something that maybe you want to transition into or a new job. A lot of times people feel like they don't have the skills. And what I teach people is let's start with what you already have. And so that's why I have that underlined here. And hopefully through this presentation, I'll be able to walk you through that process and what that looks like as you move forward. And then finally, again, the most important thing is taking those action steps to make those dreams a reality. And I've had the pleasure to be able to walk clients through this process and see them really taking those steps to achieving their dream and what they really want to do. So, background. We all know by now, we know the main nuts and bolts of this, right? So we're talking about COVID. March 2020, and the reason why I put March 2020 in there is that was when everything started to shut down. We now know that COVID had entered the United States months before, whether it's December, January, February. We don't know for sure, but we know that COVID had entered the United States prior to March. But March is kind of like the barometer of where everything kind of shut down middle of March. And we all know what happened. It was essentially an economic shutdown. Millions of people were laid off. For the people who could not, whose jobs could not transition to online, the unemployed, they became unemployed overnight. It ended up being the second highest unemployment since the Great Depression, which was in 1929. So millions of people laid off. with no end in sight. And as you know, to address the situation, the government instituted a series of stimulus checks. I believe it was three of them at different parts in the equation, as well as unemployment, which has since then been extended. And every state has been different. We'll talk about that here briefly, but those are the two things that have been implemented to kind of alleviate the situation. And so we know that that started a year and a half ago. So where we are today, and this is where it really gets, this is really going to form the basis of where I'm going to really begin this presentation in terms of what you need to think about as you move forward and looking for employment during this era that we're in. Obviously, COVID is still here. We see it all over the news. You know what's going on with the Delta variant, right? And so we're finding out nationwide that there's been positive tests. There's been an increase in positive tests everywhere. So there's a concern. Some states are worse than others for a bevy of reasons. And so you have that going on right now. Unemployment is ending. And what I mean by that is, and I'm going to talk about this later in the presentation, there are a lot of jobs available, and what we're finding is employers are having trouble filling those jobs, and one of the reasons is because unemployment is still in existence, and for some people it's disincentivizing them to work. So what you're seeing is some states have elected to end those benefits early. I believe the Biden administration is ending these in September. And of course, now I'm not sure if they're going to extend them or what they're going to do. But I know every state has been different. Some states still have it. Some states have already ended it, or it's going to end. Okay. And so these are facts. Vaccinations, masks are being reconsidered. I can tell you right now. So I teach at Ohio State all summer. The plan was to go back into class and everything, and we were to resume normal operations. And we just got the email literally day before yesterday that whether you are vaccinated or not, you have to wear a mask. So it's changed just that quickly. So and every state has been different. Some states are electing to continue to move forward with or without them. The federal government, CDC, they're encouraging vaccinations. With things increasing, there's a lot of uncertainty as we go into the fall, and so there's a fear of a setback. So I want to share this with you all now before we move forward. This presentation, as I'm talking about employment and COVID and vaccinations, I know that is very much a delicate topic. I'm not here to support or nor turn down vaccination. That is a personal decision. I got vaccinated in May, but that is a personal decision, and it is not my place to sit here and tell you or preach to you about the importance of taking a vaccination or not taking it. That is a personal decision that you need to make. What I'm giving you today is the facts about where we are today and what's going on. And whatever information you take from this, you can make the decisions that you need to make. So I just want to be clear on that as I move forward, that I'm not here to sell for or against. That's a personal decision. So we've talked about the health one, and as you see, there's several moving parts that I'm going to talk about here that you need to think about. So the first one is obviously the health concerns. COVID Delta variant. We know that it's there. We know that there's a lot more positive tests coming out. Okay, so that's the first thing that you got to think about. The second thing, the employment landscape today. Currently, and I mentioned this just briefly a few minutes ago, there's a lot of jobs available. Around 8.18 million, according to research that was conducted in the month of May, and that's pretty much remained stagnant and stayed the same. And so you say, wait a minute, there's a lot of jobs available, but people are having issues finding employment in this, again, quote unquote, post-COVID world. So what's the issue? Well, there's a couple of things that's going on here. One of them is a lot of people have no desire to go back to the job that they had, particularly and people who are in low-paying jobs. They don't want to go back to the jobs that they have because they were paying so low. And with that, they were paying so low that the unemployment that they are getting now with the COVID package incentive, they're actually making more money sitting at home than they are going back to their old job. And so many of you may have seen this. Maybe you have friends, family members, or maybe yourself. You're doing that where you could go back to your job, but when you looked at the numbers, you're actually making more in unemployment. So there's this big controversy about unemployment and whether it's disincentivizing people to go back to work, which is why you have seen a number of states begin to uh, make changes to end unemployment earlier to entice people to start applying for jobs. And so you've seen this everywhere. I'm walking around and I see a lot of employers like they things that I haven't seen in years where they're posting Home Depot had a big poster board outside about we're hiring, we have applications available, click online, and I've seen that in a lot of places. And so a lot of time unemployment has become a big thing. Another thing is health concerns, a lot of uncertainty. So you have a lot of people that are still who want to work, but they're still somewhat unsure due to the COVID concerns. And everybody's situation is different. So with the clients that I've worked with, you have people who are high risk. They have other pre-existing conditions where going back into the environment and getting that exposure, it may not be the best thing for them. So a lot of people are still somewhat concerned. And this was before we saw the increase in positive tests that we've seen in the last week or two. And working with a lot of my clients, they had these fears before. So you're still seeing that. And then you have this other group of people who they want to go to work, but they want to change and they want to go into something different. And maybe they want to do something that allows them to work online or do something hybrid, but they're kind of scared to start over again because they feel like they lack those skills or they lack the technology. And so rather than do it, make a move, they're kind of stuck. And again, you have this unemployment piece here, so it's allowing them to kind of stay at home and kind of just as I've listened to some of my clients, wait it out and see what happens. And so those are some of the main reasons. There's a lot of other reasons why people are not going back to their old jobs, but these are some of the main reasons. As I move forward into the presentation, there will be other things that we'll talk about that have impacted and can explain why there's still a lot of jobs available today. So again, to review, we've talked about what's going on right now. Again, I'm giving you information about facts. Everything that I'm giving you today is evidence-based, is based on the latest economic research about what's going on right now as it stands today, and it's constantly changing. So please keep that in mind. I've given you the health perspective, I've given you the employment perspective, and now we're going to talk a little bit more about the economic perspective from particular industries. And you all know this. This is not new to any of you. Industries are continuously changing. And this has been the case pre-COVID, where industries had been changing and things were becoming more automated. But when COVID hit, it essentially forced industries to kind of adapt or change, or businesses were going to go under. And so you've seen it. Simple things, grocery store. There was a time where you went to the grocery store, you got your items, you went to the checkout line, you would give it to a cashier. A cashier would scan it, check everything in, bill you, you pay, they bag your groceries, and you walk away. And now in some grocery stores, depending upon the items that you have, you can actually Home Depot is the one that comes to mind for me, where you can go in and you can actually get your items and you can go to the scanning station yourself, scan it with a scan gun, press the button and pay it yourself and bag it and walk out. So that job has essentially been eliminated. And so you're starting to see that a lot more. And it's worked. That got accelerated with COVID because of the transmission when you have a cashier and you have people coming in line. So they wanted to reduce that. And so you're seeing a lot of that where this physical contact has become a big concept. The less physical contact, the less chances of transmission. So that's the scientific basis behind it. So you've probably noticed this where you go out now, There's a lot of touchless things. When you pay for something, how you pay for it is different. Instead of handing over cash, and I'm kind of skipping around here, you have Cash App and Venmo and Zelle, right? I had to get these apps because with what I was doing, so many people had this and they were asking me, well, do you have Venmo, Cash App? Well, no, I have a debit card, I have cash, and a lot of people are using this now. It's touchless, right? Um, so again, Instacart, shopping online. You can literally now go to the grocery store, and before you get there, you can go online to your computer, sitting in the confines of your own home, pick out the items you want, go to the shopping center, grocery store, pop the trunk of your car, text them to let you know that you're here. Somebody comes out, puts it in the back of your trunk, and drives off. Okay, and that's here to stay. Again, another example of how things have become more automated. Construction, manufacturing, same thing. Things have become more automated. Uh, Something as simple as taking out the trash. Uh, and you still see this in a lot of areas, but there was a time where you would see a garbage truck come up. You would have a driver, two men on the back, and they would stop. The guys would jump off, go get the garbage cans from the opposite homes, dump them in the truck, put the cans back, and go down the street. Well, I watched yesterday the trash people in my neighborhood. There was one guy in a garbage truck. He pulls up and he's got an actual machine that he presses a button, and it's almost like a forklift that comes out of the side of the truck, actually picks up the trash can and dumps it and sets it back down. And then he drives on. And so I watched him the other day because I was waiting to take my garbage can back. And at no time did he ever come out of his truck. He just literally went down to each house and pressed that button. So even something as simple as taking out the trash, you now have to have a skill for that because you have to know how to drive and operate machinery. Retail stores and malls, Amazon. Uh, Enough said there. Amazon was big before COVID, and that just got accelerated. And that has actually impacted construction and manufacturing because now the demand is higher, right? So that has made automation here become more critical. I've talked about the banking industry, administrative work, for a lot of front office secretaries, where a lot of your job is making phone calls and emails and setting appointments, where you can do that at home. So that has been transitioned home. Healthcare industry, telehealth. You can now, you're sick, they set up an appointment with you, telehealth. You sit down on a Zoom conference for 20 minutes. They ask you a set of assessment questions. They might even ask you to stand up, sit down. I've actually seen this where they've done the assessment online and the doctor asks you to sit up, stand down, open your mouth, turn left, turn right. Doing their assessment online based off of what it's told them, what they have said. You have this. So they prescribe, they write the note there, prescribe the medicine, and literally go pick up the prescription, and you literally have your meds without ever having to go to the doctor's office. Again, more streamlined. Telehealth is here to stay. Again, I'm in the criminal justice system a lot. Courtrooms now, instead of going to court, there's been a lot of online video streaming. I believe you're going to see some of that stay as we continue to move forward. And colleges and universities. Ohio State last year, we had to shut down and we ended up transitioning to an online learning environment. And you're seeing a lot of more online universities, a lot of online certifications, a lot of online things. There's a lot of other things I could talk about here that have been transitioned online, but you get the picture of what where I'm going. A lot of things in just about every industry, no matter where you look, at some part of that process is being transitioned online. So we talked about health. I've talked about employment. I've talked about the economic perspective. So now I want to give you the business perspective. So this is, we're talking about from the CEO owners, ownership, management perspective. And what they are telling us is nothing that's surprising to you, that remote work and virtual meetings are likely to continue. You've seen some people transition back into offices, and in light of what's going on now, you're seeing some people fall back. And because of that, companies are bringing in fewer workers, less office space. All right. And when you really think about it from a company's bottom line, if you can save money and costs, on rent space, and you can still run your operations from people staying at home, then that's a win-win situation. There's no point in bringing back 500 employees when maybe you only need to bring back 150. So you're seeing offices do that. And in fact, based off this survey by the McKinsey company, and this was last year in August, a year ago, they found that a lot of, in a survey of 278 leaders, executives, about a third of them plan to reduce their office space. Um, I'm sorry, they plan to reduce their office space by 30%. Not a third of them, 278 of them are planning to reduce their office space by a third. And I would like to think that that number has probably increased in light of what's going on. You do have companies, and we've seen this in the last month or two prior to what we've been seeing. There was this June and July was like this barometer of when everybody was going to kind of return back to the in-person setting, though it was going to look very different. And so a lot of organizations had those plans in place. But what they're finding is a lot of people who've been working from home for a year and a half don't want to come back to the office. They actually, maybe initially when COVID happened and they had to go online, they didn't like it, but they got used to it. It became convenient for them, and it's kind of worked out for them. And so you're seeing a lot of people, a lot of employers saying, hey, I don't want to go back into the office. I kind of like this, or I prefer the hybrid approach. And initially you kind of saw this pushback, but what you're seeing for the top talent is that, hey, if I don't get the hybrid remote option, I'll just go find work somewhere else that will offer me that. Again, I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of jobs available. And so as an employee right now, as somebody who's looking for a job, you do have options. And so because of that, companies are now having to rethink their business model entirety. Operations from an operational, productivity, recruitment, retention, and employee satisfaction standpoint. Originally it was when this ends, we'll bring everybody back. But that's not the case. You have a lot of people that are leaving and threatening to leave if they don't have that hybrid remote option. So I say all that to say to you that there are options. So, and again, this is from the employee perspective. So now you have businesses, you have the bottom line, you have ownership, but from the individual employees themselves, again, people are quitting their jobs at historic rates. So I mentioned to you earlier, there are a lot of jobs available. For the people who are currently employed, they are now leaving their jobs. And in fact, the percentage of Americans leaving their employers for new opportunities is at its highest level in more than 20 years. Okay. And at that time, simultaneously, the pace of new business applications since mid 2020 of last year, they've been the highest on record, according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, which what that means is there's a lot of people that are actually going into business for themselves. And we're going to talk about that here shortly about why that's taking place. And so what economists are saying is, as long as things are the way they are right now with the economy, with these plethora of jobs, people are going to continue to pursue new opportunities and even switch careers. And that's happening as we speak. So obviously the question is why? And this is kind of where we transition to the second half of this presentation, of where these are the things that this is going to really form the foundation of what you need to start thinking about. During the pandemic, obviously, I discussed how everything shut down. So people were at home. Either you were unemployed at home or you were working virtually at home. Some people were still going face to face, but it was very different in how that looked. But during that time, there's been a lot of research to support this. What they found was that people begin to reevaluate their priorities, and they really begin to examine and look at their relationship to their jobs and redefine what it is to work. All right. And so this whole aspect of there's been a bigger focus on mental health and wellness and flexibility and happiness and personal development and quality of life have been these big initiatives, right? Prior to the pandemic, you know, using the 9 to 5 concept, a lot of us were Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, working ourselves to death, working over the weekends. Burnout was a big thing. And then all of a sudden, the world shut down and people were able to be at home with their families. And so that gave them the time to kind of think about things. And so we found that a lot of people were begin to really rethink about what was important to them. And so a survey in January of this year found that 66% of unemployed people have seriously considered changing occupations at every income level, not just high earners. So we're not just talking about people who are making $10 an hour. We're also talking about people who are making $150,000 a year. They were looking to switch careers. And a third of those who were surveyed from that same survey have started taking courses or job retraining. Notice what I have on this slide. We're talking about reevaluating priorities, reassessing the relationship to their jobs. Look at the focus: mental health, flexibility, wellness, personal development, quality of life, changing occupations. At every income level, what do I not have on here? Money. And so what you're seeing is a lot of people have, for their personal wealth, their personal well-being, money is not what's most important. And that's going to be critical as I go into this presentation, further in this presentation. When you start to look for a job, these are some of the things that you need to think about. So I'm going to recap briefly just because I want to give you everything again so you can think about these things. Barriers to employment during COVID, right? So obviously you have COVID. We know it's here, Delta variant, increase in positive tests. It's changed the economy. It's changed the way that we work. And now a lot of people are looking at new occupations. And so you have all these different moving parts about what's going on with the economy, how business execs are looking at this, how employees are looking at this, how people who are unemployed are looking at it, how people who are currently employed are looking at it, and still want to make a switch in spite of the money that they might be making. All right. So these are things that you need to keep in mind as we continue to move forward in this presentation. So everything that I've talked about up to this point is all external, with the exception of the employee part. Everything has been external. The economy, COVID, industries are changing. And so with all of that, I want to ask you the question, where are you today? What is most important to you? And so as you start, if you're not already in this process of looking for jobs, what I want you to do is I want you to step back and kind of reimagine your career. Some of you might be sure about what you want to do. Some of you may not be. Some of you have maybe never even thought about it really and on a level that you need to. And what I'm about to give you is kind of what I do with clients, whether you have a background or not. I do this with everybody. Before we start talking about employment or switching careers or going into an area on a certain occupation, the first thing I ask is, what is most important to you? What do you value? And the reason why I ask you this is because what is most important is going to define, is going to drive the next decision that you make. Okay. And so it's got to be answered before you seek to switch careers. And so let me give you an example. And I'm going to skip around on this slide because it's going to make sense once I explain this to you. When I talk about what's most important to you, that's going to be different for every individual. So what I'm about to tell you is not a right or wrong, it's just preference. Some people, okay, well, I want to go be a CDL truck driver. Okay, well, first of all, what's important to you? Well, I want to make money is important to you. Okay, well, money is important to everybody. But let's take a step back. What does the job of a CDL truck driver do? He drops off materials, he goes across the United States. Okay, do you have a family? Do you have wife, kids, spouse? So when I talk about what do you value, we have to step back to the beginning. What do you value? Some people, they value their family. Okay. And when I say value their family, like their world revolves around their family. They got children, they have soccer tournaments, they have basketball, extracurricular activities. They like to do things together. For other people, they have parents that live with them that might be sick, might be down the road. Somebody's in a nursing home. Everybody's situation is different. And so I'm just loosely giving you things What's important to somebody else? Flexibility. I don't have kids. I don't have a family. I'm not married, but I love flexibility. I don't want to go into an office. And so when I talk about, or hey, what do you value? I love working with people. So before you start thinking about the direction you want to go in, you got to look at what's most important, because that is going to drive. And I always go back to this with clients when they want to go into an occupation that they think they'll like because it pays a lot of money. And then I go back to what they value. Okay, you want to be a manager or a leader. This job over here, Dr. Hinton, looks very good. It pays $150, 150,000 a year. Great salary. But what I explain to people is when you get paid a high paying job, they're not just paying you for the responsibilities in the job description, they're also paying you for that extra time that you're going to be spending, which is not spelled out in that job description. They're paying you for your time. The higher the paying job, the more likely you're going to be asked to work outside of normal working hours. Don't forget that. Okay. That's not something that's going to be spelled out to you. But when you are making a lot, the more money that you make, the more that's going to be required of you. So if you are somebody that you really value family, and this is not to say that if you take that, you don't value family, but if you have children, you have a spouse, and you really enjoy that time, and you don't want to work weekends, you don't want to work after hours after 6 p.m., you want to be engaged with your family. If you are an individual like that, then that might not be the best job for you to take, because once you take it, that's what's going to be the expectation, and they're paying you for that. And so those are the things that I kind of walk through with people, because obviously everybody wants a high paying job, but let's go back to what you value. And so, not to sound cliche, when they say money isn't everything, it really is the case. Now, I'm not expecting you to to look at a low paying job, but what I'm expecting you to do is really think about what's most important to you and what do you value, because that will drive what area you choose to go into. And again, what do you ultimately want to do career wise? That's going to be different. Some people like to work with people. Okay. You might go into social services. It just depends. Some people don't want to work with anybody. They like working by themselves. Okay. CDL truck driver might be great because you're in a truck a lot. Everybody's situation is different. What I end up doing, and I don't have it on here for the sake of time, but I put them through an assessment, one or two assessments where I talk about likes, dislikes, and what your current skills are, because that's really going to also navigate what areas that we look into career wise. Know this: no matter what you pick, know that you have options today. You can work in person, hybrid, or remote. And that's whether you, no matter where you're from, no matter what your background is, you have those options. Because again, as I showed you in the previous slide, a lot of industries have changed to where you now have that option. And if you can really think about this, you can actually now move and work in totally different places. I just helped a neighbor move a couple of weeks ago, and he was moving to Florida. And so I was asking him just a few questions as we were I was helping him move. And I said, "Oh, so you're moving to Florida?" He's like, "Yeah, a lot of my family, all my family, on my side and my wife's side, they live in Florida. So we just decided to move." I said, "Oh, so you found a job down there?" And he said, "Well, no, actually, my job is online and it's in Chicago. But since it's fully remote, there's no need to stay here. Why not just go move where you're closer to your family and you're employed and you get the best of both worlds?" You see what I'm saying? And so that's kind of what I'm talking about here. When we talk about reimagining career, prior to the pandemic, that might have been something you never thought about. Hey, I got to live and work in, I have to live in the same place I work. But now that's not necessarily the case. You can live in one area and work somewhere completely different. So that's just something to think about. I put this here, and I should have put this last because this is probably one of the most important things. Um, because I'm hearing a lot about what's going on with the Delta variant and everything that's going on. And you do need to be completely aware about what's going on. But at the end of the day, you cannot control the federal government. You can't control whether other people choose to or not to take a vaccination. You can't control people deciding to wear a mask or not wear a mask. You can't control the weather. There's a lot of things that you can't control. And so throughout this presentation, what I want you to do, and as you move forward in this process, is to focus on the things that you can control, because those other things, they are important to know as information, because it will help you and how you make your choices and how you choose to proceed forward. But just know that you can't control those things. And so I get a lot of frustration from people that's, well, I would go into this industry, or I would do this or go back to school, but because of stupid COVID, and people won't wear their mask, or people won't take their vaccination. So I'm not, and redirect people, because you can't control other people. So do not let um, what is out of your control define how you move forward. There's other ways to do things now, and we figured that out during the pandemic, that there are a lot of ways to do different things now, and we figured that out. So if you weren't an innovator before, you will become an innovator now, because there are ways that you can still reimagine your career to the point that no matter what's going on in the world today, you can still move forward in your individual goals and objectives and what is important to you. And I've already talked about this. Again, reimagine your career, think outside the box. Again, you can relocate now and be anywhere and work if you so choose to. There's a now, some people, they want to be in work 100% in person. Not a problem. Okay. There are some people that want to be fully remote. Not an issue. There are some people, you know what? I like both. And what we're seeing is this hybrid approach seems to be the preferred method for a lot of industries. Okay. And so there's a lot of options. Okay. So, a lot of talk, I want to encourage you to dream and dream big, because you have options. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're going to be rich, but what I'm suggesting is, when you think about what you value, maybe now is the time for you to really think about the things that you really want to do, things that maybe prior to the pandemic, you never thought of that were possible, that are now possible. So I am asking you to think outside the box and think big. Um, One small thing I do with clients, for example, I told you earlier that a lot of people are kind of reaching out and leaving their jobs, and they're running their own business. Well, a lot of times when we think of owning your own business, you got to own your own business, open, go, buy some property, build a building, and operate your business out of that building. Well, not so much today. Today, you can run your own business from your home. Um, and what I helped a client do one time, and I can't remember exactly what kind of business he had, but it did require him at times to be face to face with the individual. And so he was having trouble trying to figure that out, because he didn't exactly want to meet at a Starbucks. He did want some privacy. Well, and the thing is, in cities today, there are places where you can actually rent office space where you can meet with somebody, and it's like an office area, and you can meet with them and conduct your business there. Now, that comes with a fee that you have to pay for. With this individual client, he didn't want to really do that. So what I suggested was the library. If you go into the libraries right now, currently, are still open, um, and you have to wear a mask in the, particularly in the libraries that I'm going to, you have to wear a mask now, but they're open and they have conference rooms where you can sit 2, 3, 5, 10 people. So I gave him the idea of, why don't you go to the library, get yourself a library card, register with the library. You actually can rent space for free at no cost. And you can actually do it 30 days out, where you can rent, if it's available, room A, room B, and you can rent it for 2 to 3 hours at a time. So he's done that, and that's worked wonders for him. Not only can he conduct his business when he needs to in person, he can do it for free at no cost. So again, when I say thinking outside the box, those are the things that I help clients, or I help individuals, no matter what your background is. That is the things that I help people to kind of think through, that there are resources out there that you can utilize at no cost to conduct your business. So that's just an example of what we're talking about. Um, I do want to mention, when I talk about hybrid work and online work, what they're seeing is nearly half of all employees with advanced degrees, and so we were talking about advanced, master's degree or above, we're working remotely, while more than 90% of those with a high school diploma or less are having to go to their jobs and show up in person. So I'll say to you this: if you are an individual, and I don't care where you are on the spectrum, whether you have a GED, high school diploma, no GED, bachelor's, master's, or doctorate degree, do not think that you can't be one of these individuals that can work remotely. However, and I'm going to talk about this here in a minute, if you value flexibility and you want to be able to have a remote job, then in our process, when I'm assessing you, one of your things is you might have to go back to school to get an advanced degree or take a technology class, okay, or go to school as an online hybrid student, okay. So there are steps to this, right? If you're somebody that values that, then there are steps that you can take to get that degree, and it is possible. As a professor myself, I teach online, and I can tell you firsthand, I got a student right now. I apologize. I have a student right now. He's been out of school 20 plus years, and he's just started back, and he's going online. And he's having to work out some kinks, but he's figuring it out as he goes along. So there are people that are doing this as we speak. This is not something that I'm just suggesting to you. There are people that are doing it. And for him, he's going back to school because he is trying to switch careers. And he figured out that for the career he wants to go into, he's got to do some online work. So that's what he's doing, because what he values is flexibility. So that's an example of kind of what I'm talking about here, where you start to think outside the box. School might be one of those things that you have to consider. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a 4-year school. You have 2-year technical colleges. You have and now they're coming out with all kind of certifications where it's a year, 6 weeks, 12 weeks. There's all kind of things out there for you to explore. So I've said this before, and I'll say it again because it's so important. What you value is going to navigate your job search. So before you do anything, you got to think about what you value. Because once you figure that out, and I would really, literally, I would take notes. I would write that down. These are the things that I value. I value flexibility. I want to be able to work. I don't mind working Monday through Sunday, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because I like to work online. So maybe during the day, I might work for a few hours, and then I might sleep, go cut grass, go work out, go visit with a friend, and get back to work. I'm okay with that. Some other people, you know what? I'd rather be physically in person, working 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And when I leave at 5 o'clock, I'm not going to be bothered with any work. Everybody's different. Okay. You first have to define what you value, because that's going to navigate what area that you go into. Again, once you've looked at what you value, you're going to go into your areas that you've been interested in. And the first thing you're going to ask yourself, and this is what I do, is look at some of those job descriptions. If you have an idea of kind of the industry you want to go into, start picking around at some of those positions and look at the job description and read it and ask yourself, do you have the skills that it takes to be in that job? Okay. A lot of times people start looking for the jobs that pay a lot of money. You want to look at the skills. Oftentimes, and in particular, you want to look at the skills that are transferable, because a lot of times people, they'll find a career they want to go into, and the first thing they think is, okay, Dr. Hen, I got to go back to school because this is what I want to do. And what I say is, wait, first, we've defined what you value. You want to go into this industry because it aligns with what you value, but you don't know that you necessarily have the skills. Well, wait, let's look at the job descriptions. What are they asking for? And ask yourself this before you start to go out to spend money on getting an extra credential. Look to see that you already have these skills, and particularly skills that are transferable. So these are skills that you have acquired during any activity, and it's not necessarily confined to one field, and it can be transferred to any job. Some examples of that: problem solving, customer service, multitasking, leadership, but there's a whole bunch of them. Communication. So don't disqualify yourself right off the bat because you feel like, oh, I don't have communication skills. Well, wait, go back and look at your resume and job history. I have found with a lot of my clients, if they're looking at a job that they want and they want to go into this career, and there's a list of 10 to 15 skills that they need. Oh, Dr. Hinton, I don't have any of these. Then we walk them through that process of going back to their past history and kind of saying, wait a minute, you did communication in this previous job, you had leadership in this job. By the time we get to the end, they have 10 of the 15 skills. They may not have all of them, but they realize, you know what, I'm not as far behind as I thought. these skills can transfer. So when you're writing up your resume or you're applying, you can use those skills and you can talk about that in your interview with this employer, how those skills are transferable and how you can use them in a particular job description. So that's a whole nother presentation that I can talk about when you're interviewing, answering the questions as it pertains to that job description. But again, that is why I talk about, let's look at what you already have first. Now, that doesn't cost any money. It is possible in many cases where maybe you do need to go back to school. That's fine. You've taken those steps in that process to say, hey, I have realized in my previous experience, I don't have what is needed. So in order for me to proceed forward in this career, I need to go back to school. That's fine. You've gone through those concrete steps. But I always encourage people to do that first before you spend any money, because a lot of times people just run out and you get it in your emails. Hey, if you want this job, come through our 6-week class for $1,000 and you'll have this credential and it'll help you get employment. And people will run to those things. And I'm not saying that those are bad, but what I'm saying is wait, stop, let's look at where you're at and what skills you already have. You may need it, you may not. So I encourage you to do that. Again, highlight the skills that are transferable and applicable to the job description. And you'll be surprised at, if you look back at your work history, I don't care if you've been in prison. Okay. A lot of my clients who have been in prison, they held jobs. And if you held jobs, you have skills from that. Okay. And I walk clients through that process of how they can then move those skills into and apply them to the job that they're looking to do. So some of the industries, and I say again, post-COVID, we're still in this era. Some of the industries that are in demand right now, and I've kind of touched on this loosely. Again, shopping online has become a big thing, particularly with Amazon. So automation and artificial intelligence in warehouses, grocery stores, call centers, and manufacturing plants right now is huge. And the point of doing that, again, is to reduce workplace density. So again, less contact with each other. And they're also doing that to cope with surges in demand. So I know a lot of times people say, technology is destroying jobs. What I like to say is, it depends on how you look at it. So it might be taking away that person who was lifting those packages and moving them from one place to another. But if you're an individual that is thinking outside the box and can innovate, maybe you can learn how to operate the machinery that actually picks up the boxes and sets them down, right? So you can have machines take over things, but somebody has to learn how to operate the machine. So when I'm talking about thinking outside the box, those are the types of things that you need to think about, that, hey, there are other ways around this. Okay. I used to offload garbage down the street where I just do garbage. I don't have any skills. Well, wait a minute. A lot of jobs now transitioning, as I told you, the garbage man now, he's got to know how to operate a truck. He doesn't use his hands and his feet. Now, if the machine malfunctions, he's got to know how to troubleshoot. But by and large, he's got to know how to drive. And so that's the things that you have to start to think about. I don't care what industry is in, things are being transferred. And so what you have to figure out is what skills are needed in that area. So again, in these areas, automation and artificial intelligence, know how to work computers and machinery. Somebody still got to press the button. They don't do that on its own. So that's something that you got to think about. Demand for workers in the healthcare and STEM areas. For those who are not familiar with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Okay. And this is going to grow more than before the pandemic, obviously, because of the pandemic. Also, there's an increased attention to health as populations age. And again, the baby boomer population, a lot of people are starting to retire. So there's going to be this wide expansion of people who are coming out of the workforce. They're going to need to be cared for. So STEM is a big area of growth. Janitorial services is a huge area. Why? COVID, cleanliness, okay? And not just wiping off tables, literally having contracts with people who come in and wipe the place down, start to finish. And if you think about it, any place that's public right now, that's a big thing. Daycare centers, nurseries, airports, hospitals, that has become a big thing. No longer are they letting, if you're in a hospital, obviously a hospital worker, they demand, they require you to clean your area before you do any work. But they're actually getting people now to come in who are professionals and clean, and that's what they do. They do nothing else but clean. That has become a big area. And as you can see, with infections rising, positive tests rising, that's going to be here to stay. Uh, Whether you are somebody that wants to switch occupations or not, you do need to know, according to the research, as many as a quarter of people who are working may have to switch occupations anyway. So you need to know that. So if you're somebody who you don't want to switch, know that due to the changes that are happening in our industry that are continuing to change, you might need to do that again. And as I said before, you have to think about the things that you can control. Industries are changing rapidly and you have no control over that. The only thing you can control is how you respond to these changes. So whether it's getting a new job, acquiring new skills, looking back at your transferable skills, those are the things that you have to think about. The largest negative impact of the pandemic is going to follow people in the food service and customer sales and service roles and office support roles. Those things have started to go away. Again, this is not to demean the food service at all. But when I'm working with clients, I'm not working to get somebody into a job for $10 an hour. You do not need my expertise for that. Okay. A 10, 11, $12 an hour job. I work to get clients into a job that is a livable wage that they can support themselves and a family, okay, that offers benefits. I don't ever work for the client to get them a $12 an hour job. If I'm doing that, I failed the client. And so when I am looking, when I'm talking about employment and switching careers, I'm transitioning people into things that they can make a livable, sustainable wage. So you have all this information. What do? You take action. Once you know what you want, go for it. So once you know what you value, what you enjoy doing work-wise, it's in alignment with what you value. It gives you the flexibility to do whatever it is you want to do that's important to you. And you know the area you want to go into. You know what skills you have, what skills you need. It's time to take action. Either you go straight to applying, you network, you attend job fairs. Again, now I would say virtual job fairs. A lot of that's held virtually. Webinars. LinkedIn is one of the most valuable tools. If you do not have a LinkedIn page, I highly encourage you to get a LinkedIn page. It's the best thing that you could ever do for yourself. Volunteering is another huge one where you can not only go into an area to see how you feel about it. It's obviously it's your free time, but you may not be sure about the industry. This gives you the chance to go in, volunteer, give your free time, see what you like about it. And if it's something that you want to go into career-wise, you get to meet people, connect with people, let them know what you're interested in, and you get to acquire new skills. So if you want to be in that area of that industry, go volunteer for that industry and pick up those skills. You know what? I don't have a lot of communication skills. Let me see if they'll let me be a volunteer. You'll be surprised at how many employers will let you will be happy to have your free time. Again, COVID notwithstanding. Um, but go do that and acquire those skills. I highly encourage that. Meet, Zoom, and connect with people in the industry you want to be in. Okay. If you know somebody in that industry, by all means, meet with them, sit down, have a cup of coffee, a virtual Zoom coffee meeting, and ask them questions, take notes. Hey, how did you get started in this process? Oh, here are the do's and the don'ts. What are the pluses and minuses of it? The sky's the limit on what you can do, but network, network, network. You will not have everything figured out. Just get started. So when I say take action now, like immediately, there's no need to wait. There's no need to sit back. Once you have thought about what you value, what's most important, what area you want to go into, take action and take action steps. You will not have everything figured out. If you are going to wait for everything to come into alignment, for COVID to be over, for Delta variant to be over, for people to get vaccinated, you're wasting your time. Don't wait on any of that. Again, you can't control that. The only thing you can control is what action steps that you're going to take and move forward. Okay. And for everybody, that's going to be different depending upon whether you're switching careers, whether you want to move up into your career, whether you want to just start working, period. You're not going to have everything figured out. Just get started. For example, you want to go to school, and I've kind of covered this. Why do you want to go to school? What do you value? Is it for a new occupation? Does it fit in with what you value long term? Is it sustainable? What would this degree of certification allow you to do? As an entrepreneur, why do you want to work for yourself? It sounds like a stupid question, but really, well, I just don't want a boss telling me what to do. Okay, most people have a boss. And a lot of people don't understand when you own a business, you're working 10 times harder than when you had a boss. So why is it? Uh, what are you selling? Is it in demand? What kind of business is it? Have you done your research? Do you know somebody? A mentor, a friend in the industry? Network with people, get on LinkedIn, meet with people, introduce yourself. There's all kind of ways that you can get in touch with people now. And essentially, you don't even have to leave your home. You can connect virtually. So it's not like you have to get out and drive around to a lot of places. No matter what the occupation is, it's all about relationships. So that whole saying about it's not what you know, it's who you know, that is very true. Uh, so you have to connect. And so I highly, for those of you who have LinkedIn pages or don't have LinkedIn, I highly encourage you to utilize that. So to review, we've looked at the world today in regards to the economic landscape, the shift in business industry perspectives, defining what's important to you in light of all of that. What kind of job do you want in light of what's going on and what you value? You're going to do your homework, do your research. You're going to assess the skills that you already have and then find out what you need to obtain. You're going to develop your plan. You're going to plan it. You're going to record it. You're going to review. And then you're going to take action, whether it's going to school, applying for that different application, applying for that entrepreneurship, business application, networking, strategic planning, relationships, whatever you're going to do, you're going to take that action step. And again, it's got to be strategic. I'm not just going to volunteer anywhere just because and figure it out. I'm going to strategically volunteer in the areas that I want to go into. It wouldn't make sense for you to go volunteer in one place if you're not interested in that domain. So if you're going to volunteer, volunteer for an agency or for a place in an area that you want to work in. Again, cost, essentially in the beginning, it's not going to cost you anything financially, but time. As you move forward in this process, depending upon what your situation is, it might be a monetary value. There are loans, there are things out there that you can utilize to help facilitate that process. But a lot of times people think, okay, let me start digging in my pocket. You might find through the process that I just shared with you, you don't need money. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's reaching out to somebody. Okay. So again, that is why you have to plan these things out. You have to think about what you want, define, process, document, and then you move forward. Some additional tips real quickly. Embrace creativity, innovation, diversity with your skill set. Okay. Keep your options open. As I've told you, the world is constantly changing by the day, by the minute, and we have no control over that. Industries are changing. So be open-minded to what you want to do or what you want to go into. Have a couple of things that you might want to transition into. Ask for help. You can't do this alone. Okay. Network, communicate with people, get out and connect. If you don't have anybody in connect, LinkedIn is a valuable resource to utilize. Know that you can do this. I've just given you the data, and the reason I gave you that data was to show you that people are already doing it. It's being done, and they are moving forward. It doesn't mean that the stars are aligning quickly. Okay, this is a process, and it does take time, right? But what the data is showing us is that people are actually taking those concrete action steps. They're achieving their dreams. They're taking that step forward. Okay. So what I'm saying is it is a process. It takes time, but get going. And this can be done no matter where you are on the spectrum, rich, poor, GED, degree, advanced degree, you can do this. And so I want to all encourage you in this process as you move forward. Again, these are the resources. If you want to go back and look up some of these things on your own, feel free to do so. If there are any additional questions, you can also reach out to us at Medline Workforce and Reentry Solutions at 619-335-8737, or also go to our website, www.medlinesolutions.com, to look at some of the other resources and other things and trainings that we provide, as we do provide a number of services. And I want to thank you all for joining today. I would love to hear some of your feedback. So please go ahead and tell me what you think of today's webinar by clicking on the link below. And that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and please stay safe as we navigate these challenging times. Thank you.